Good evening, folks, family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle Earth, to a special Thursday episode of Disguised Coverage, the only podcast in existence that gives you an equal amount of blueberries in each muffin. I'm your host, Anthony Prohaska. Find me on the old Twitter at pro__ANT. That's pro__ant. Give me a follow on the old Twitter. Find me on TikTok at the same handle, pro__ant, pro__ANT. For those of you who are regular viewers of or listeners of Disguise Coverage from the way back in the long ago, the show used to be live on Thursdays at 9 o'clock and made the move to Wednesdays. But this week, pivoted back to a Thursday time slot just for this 1 week as a one-off in order to accommodate Mr. Joshua Patrick Allen and the match last night. Of course, Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes versus Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. We're going to talk about that briefly tonight, just kind of overall thoughts on it. Anybody, joining in live, got any thoughts on that? Feel free to join in as well. But the meat and the crux of tonight's episode will be focused on the Buffalo Bills OTAs and that week 2 portion of these organized team activities. We had more interviews, more pressers, more practice time this week, more footage, all that kind of stuff coming out from One Bills Drive and Bills OTAs. And much like we did last week for week 1 of OTAs, we're going to go through and talk about the most important takeaways and the gems from week 2 in Bills OTAs. As I stated last week, this is the time of year where you're going to get a lot of propaganda, a lot of fluff. There's going to be a whole bunch of everybody looks great, this is fantastic, or it's going to be player A sat out, player A is not here. There's not a lot of detail. There's not a lot of depth. But what's good is if you comb through enough of the reports, which I do, and if you listen to all the pressers, which I also do, you can start to piece things together and you can take note of the patterns, you can take note of the trends, and you start to piece and patchwork all those things together to comment here from Penn saying, give me all that fluff. I need it. I feel you. That's fair. To each their own. You start to piece and patchwork these trends and these patterns together, and you can really start to gain a sense of some real things that are going on behind the scenes or, kind of that are front facing, but aren't necessarily readily available based on the information and how it's presented. So we're going to dive into several things this week. Last week, it was the focus on several things from Sean McDermott's presser. A lot, talking about how AJ Epinesa, Gregory Rousseau, and Carlos Basham, one of them need to step up in a primary fashion, not just in a secondary role, and make their mark on this defense. We dove into several takeaways from Gregory Rousseau's press conference last week. And then also dove into some practice things, talked about Aaron Kromer, Tommy Doyle, some other things, connected to that tonight. We're going to talk about Aaron Kromer, but that's the theme and the overall trend for tonight's episode. We're going to go through and really dive into, again, everything that's been stated this week in OTAs, everything that was seen on the field, and really give you guys the most important takeaways and the gems for you to focus on and hone in on as we move towards the regular season, because some of the things that we're seeing and hearing in OTAs this week are going to be important for 2022 and beyond. And for those of you joining me live, thank you guys so much for joining me live. As always on the show, you guys know the deal. Any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, ideologies, philosophies, theorems, maxims, whatever you got, throw them into the chat. I try to make the show as engaging as humanly possible. So throw everything up into the chat if you can. I try to get to anything and everything possible. As always, super chats are a priority because 1, I respect the donation, and 2, the flash and pop of color always catches my eye and it directs me towards the chat right away. Also, for those of you here live, or if you're not live and you happen to be watching this later, that's fine. Drop a like on this video. It goes a long way towards helping myself and the entire Cover One team to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears. If you are listening on any one of the podcasting apps or platforms, specifically Spotify and or Apple podcast, please rate and review, subscribe to Disguised Coverage. Appreciate your support in any and every form that you can possibly give it. Go to some of the comments here. Steve asks, when does training camp for the Bills begin? Usually, I don't know if there's a hard date as of now, but it's usually like the 3rd week in July, middle-ish towards endish of July, sometime in that range of like the 16s through the 20s, usually towards that back end of July is when we get official training camp. Oh, appreciate you, Jason. Jason says the tree is lit today. You make me very happy. You'll make my wife happy. The wife and I went back and forth. Didn't know what to do for June, because it's a summer month, but there's no, like, we didn't know what we wanted to hang our hat on. So we decided to go with the yellow, little summer theme. But there's also a little yellow lantern over there as well. Same color scheme going on. We figured summer, bright color, fun, sun. The sun is yellow. Usually you see the sun in summer. Sometimes you don't in Buffalo. We get that gray sky, but yellow for June, for the kickoff of summer. Appreciate you recognizing the tree. My wife will be very happy you've made her a happy camper tonight. And then Jason follows up with this comment saying, an open linebacker spot. Andre was a bad boy. Yes, Bill's linebacker Andre Smith, as of now, as it stands, will have to serve a 6-game suspension for PEDs. Unfortunate for him, but I also read that he's going to appeal in some form or fashion, and which always happens. Maybe, it gets knocked down a bit. Maybe he really didn't do anything wrong. Those situations are so murky. We'll see what happens with him. What up, J-Dub? Appreciate you being here. Thank you very much for stopping by. Good comment here from Antonio saying, I can't wait to see the defensive linemen go to work and see who makes the team. Yeah, I'm excited too. The defensive line group, I'm guessing that's what you mean by DLs. I'm guessing you mean the defensive linemen. I'm very excited for that as well. As we talked about on last week's show, Von Miller is a known quantity. Knock on wood, you know what you're going to get from Von Miller, which is high-end production and a consistent threat, a walking bucket, a guy who can win one-on-one at any point in time. But after Von Miller, the best pass rusher on this Bills team is Ed Oliver. And obviously Ed Oliver plays defensive tackle. But in the times that Ed Oliver was kicked outside to edge, he honestly showed better pass rush moves than any other edge currently on the Buffalo Bills roster. Say what you will about Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison, so on and so forth, like we spoke about last week. They were the best edge rushers on the Bills team last year. They are both gone. They both had a significant snap share. Jerry Hughes with the second most snaps among Bills defensive linemen, Mario Addison with the 4th. Jerry Hughes led the team in pressures. Mario Addison was 3rd. They accounted for 26% of the total team pressures last year together. Those numbers, those stats, those are very relevant because those guys are gone. Someone else has to fill their spot. Von Miller obviously fills a significant part of it, but someone else has to step up from that edge spot. And yeah, I'm very excited to see the edge grouping again. A second year for Gregory Rousseau, who was a standout run defender last year, legitimately. Like I feel like people don't really recognize how good of a year he had on the edge from the run perspective, because usually edge rushers only get love and they only get shine if they're getting tons of pressures or getting tons of sacks, and he didn't really have that last year. But his run defense was fantastic. He was 5th in ESPN's pass rush win rate. I think he was 1st in stops amongst all edges, not just rookies, amongst all edges. He was up there in stop percentage as well. So, whatever companies or sites, advanced metrics you want to use, by all accounts, he was strong against the run. And then you put the tape on and you see the technique and the violence in the hands and the physicality that he exhibited, and his ability to crash down, his ability to stay strong at the point of attack and set the edge. He had a really good year last year. And so, that's a known quantity coming in, but I'm excited to see what Gregory Rousseau can be as a pass rusher coming into year 2. Same thing for Boogie Basham, who myself and Eric Turner went and dove into his game tape from the 2021 season. So if you're looking for a film breakdown and analysis of Carlos Basham's rookie year and what he could be in 2022, go check out the Cover One Film Room episode. Not right now, obviously, but after the show, go check out the Cover One Film Room. And Eric and I are a little down on Basham compared to others, based on our evaluation coming out of Wake Forest for him. But, he's still got potential. I reserve judgment on any, and hold off on any player until they've had a good solid 3 years in the league. Basham slimmed out and thinned out a little bit when it came to his playing weight this year. So potentially he's a different player coming into camp this year. Maybe AJ Epinesa can put some things together. I know he's going into year 3, but his rookie year was a COVID year and he was body transforming and shedding weight and learning how to play, edge in the NFL. So there's a lot of potential still in the young guns for the Bills edge grouping and the defensive line in general. And then you go to interior, and what is Tim Settle going to be? What is Daquan Jones going to be? What does Jordan Phillips look like? We didn't even mention Shaq Lawson. There's a lot of potential, moving parts that I'm very excited to see for come training camp time. Got some more. Oh, a nice Lord of the Rings comment. Jessica, well done. Ooh, Jason saying, I think Ryan Fitzpatrick should sign a 1-day contract with Buffalo to retire a Bill. I saw some back and forth comments with this on Twitter. I'm not for or against it. I'd be cool if he signed a one-day contract and retired as a Bill. He was a cool piece of the franchise for a little bit, and seeing him come back to Buffalo for the wild card game against New England and how jacked up and geeked up he was, just sitting in the stands with like the regular fans, like he's a good dude and well respected, and I'd be okay with that. Comment here from Dwayne. Dwayne saying going solo today. Yes, went solo last week, solo this week. I know we're used to the in-season disguise coverage episodes where I always have a guest on who covers the opponent that the Bills are playing, or I go to the well and get Nate Tice from The Athletic or Seth Galina from PFF, guys to really break down the nuance and X's and O's and the hows and whys of things behind football, and not just the Bills, but the Bills and football in general. But yeah, every once in a while, I got to revert back to the old solo game. And, we might be seeing more of that in the coming weeks and coming months. And maybe I'll have some guests, but you got to tune in every week because it's a surprise. Jason, you are a little late, but that's okay. You're the man. I appreciate everybody too for, again, joining me on Thursday. I didn't know what the viewership was going to be because we switched days. I don't know what people's schedules look like on Thursdays at 7 as opposed to Wednesdays. So I'm excited to see a lot of the regular faces joining me here tonight. Jason, you are one of them, and you're always very appreciative of the tree. Yeah, all yellowed out. I mentioned it earlier before you came in. The wife and I didn't really know what color scheme to go with for June. So the wife came up with yellow because, summertime and the sun is yellow and there's a lot of sun in summer and yellow looks nice. I thought it would go good with the silver. It does. She also got a little yellow lantern over there. So all yellowed out for summer. And then July, got to have some 4th of July stuff coming around. I think got some really nice garland planned for that. It's a good time. It's a good time. Comment here from Dwayne as we continue to intro in here. Dwayne says you have to think Rousseau is going to get lots of help from Vaughn. Yeah, I think he will in two ways. I think, the way to approach the game from a weekly preparation standpoint that he can learn from Vaughn, the in-game nuance that he can learn from Vaughn, just like there's so much to it, and like reading an offensive lineman in front of you and knowing how to study them leading into the game, but then how to read them in-game pre-snap and see, okay, are they on the balls of their feet? Are they on their heels? Where is their hand placement? What do their hands look like? How, what clues or keys are they giving me to help indicate, is this going to be a run? Is this going to be a pass? What kind of pass set are they coming out in? Is it going to be a 45-degree set? Is it going to be a vertical set? And then using all of that and diagnosing that pre-snap to be able to attack post-snap and set yourself up for success. I think Von Miller will help Greg Rousseau tremendously with that. And then just from, an on-field X's and O's standpoint, Von's going to command attention. If they're putting a tight end on the line, it's going to be to where Von Miller is. If they're going to have a running back chip on an edge player, it's going to be Von Miller. If someone's getting double teamed, it's going to be Von Miller. So Gregory Rousseau is going to have one-on-one opportunities to prove himself regularly, as will whoever is the edge on that other side away from Von Miller, as will Ed Oliver, who had a tremendous year last year. Now he gets some one-on-one opportunities inside Greg Oliver. Ed Oliver had one of the highest double team rates amongst all defensive linemen last year. Now he gets some one-on-one opportunities. There's a cascading positive domino effect from the Von Miller edition. And yeah, Rousseau is one of those guys who could see it. What else? Oh, my comment skipped ahead. Dwayne said 42 watching, 16 likes. Slam that like button. Please, 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 and thank you. Please and thank you. Oh, Andy says, is that a Yankees hat or a Blue Jays hat? It is neither. I'm a big Boston Red Sox fan. This is a black Boston Red Sox hat with a white and red B there. I got this in San Francisco at a Lids in San Francisco. It was pretty cool. I don't like anything else Boston. Not a Pats fan, not a Bruins fan. I dislike both of those teams. I'm lukewarm or meh on the Celtics, but yes, Boston Red Sox hat. All right, let me scroll back. Comment here, Groot as a second year and Boogie improves, and a main concern about 2 or 3 units. We're in great shape. Fair. Oh, John is banging the drum here. John says the best defensive line in years. It would be nice if this defensive line could, give some return on investment. There's been a lot of financial allocation to the defensive line for the Bills. There's been a lot of draft capital invested. So there's been a lot of resources that have been allocated to the defensive line, as is expected. We've seen Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott both talk about how they believe in building from the defensive line out and how important that unit is. So it makes sense that the defensive line has heavy monetary investment and draft capital invested as well. Dwayne says, I love Basham's speed for an interior defensive lineman. Based on what the Bills have on the interior and what they're going to have at edge, I think you see Basham kick almost kick out almost exclusively to edge rusher this year. And if you go back and look at his snaps last year, again, we talked about it in the film room, myself and Eric Turner this week in the Cover One film room, the heavy majority of his snaps came at the edge positions, like over 90%. He had, I think, 17 snaps on the interior in terms of like defensive tackle or right or left side. The heavy majority of his snaps last year came at edge. I would have to think that that would increase as well, given, you know, his change in weight and reducing down a little bit. Again, maybe they want to go more NASCAR package and want to put him at defensive tackle for some, you know, key opportunities potentially if he really shows that potential. But I expect to see him more on the edge, even more so than last year. Oh, appreciate you, Dwayne. Thank you very much. Very much. Oh, I'm losing it already. My grammar, slipping over my words. Appreciate you, Dwayne. Ned, always here joining me live. Appreciate you, Ned. Ned says, honest thoughts on the match. They were all worse at golf than I thought they were going to be. I don't golf, so I don't want to be too critical. But they were not, I don't know if I expected them to be better, but they were just worse than I thought they'd be. I thought the coolest part was just hearing the dialogue back and forth, like towards the end, hearing Rodgers and Brady going back and forth on like reading the green when Brady was about to putt, and Brady was talking about, you know, like the left edge, and they were talking about which way the green was going. It was cool to hear the banter and the back and forth. I thought that was really cool. I like that, like behind the scenes, you know, peek behind the curtain type thing. But other than that, you know, I had a great time chilling with Greg and Aaron and Mike, all from Cover One. We did a Cover One premium Slack channel live viewing hangout type thing, and I had some good attendance and good banter back and forth. It was a good time. Oh, appreciate you, John. John says that I'm worth the watch. I appreciate you very much. Thank you so much for the kind words. Where? Oh, yes. No, Basham shed weight. I don't know how much Basham lost. I know he just came slimmed down. I don't know if it's as significant or as drastic as what AJ Epinesa did in that body transformation, but yeah, he is, from what reports are now, significantly lighter, especially considering last year he played at 285 pounds, which is definitely on the heavier side for an edge. And yeah, he's a different guy this year. Oh, interesting comment here from Jessica. Jessica says that Bruce Smith played at 265, which is the weight that Boogie Basham is at right now. Boogie's height and shape is close to Bruce. If that means he can play like Bruce, it's fantastic. I'll take that. I will take that all day. John says, I think there will be more pressures, parentheses, sacks with Groot, Daquan Jones, Ed, and Vaughn with solid backups. Yeah, there's a lot of depth and functionality and versatility on this defensive line. I'm very excited for that. I see some negativity in the chat because I'm a Red Sox fan. It's a family thing, dates back for a long time to grandparents and great grandparents and so on and so forth. So it's a family thing on my dad's side, Red Sox all day. I apologize to anyone who's upset because I am not a Yankee or Mets fan or even Blue Jays fan. So I apologize if you've lost your faith in me, but hopefully we can find a way to bring it back. And yeah, as we start to, shift and pivot a little bit, we're going to dive into the first topic of this episode. And actually, just kidding, before we do that, you guys know the drill. Got to show some love for the sponsor, One Pie Pizza. You see the logo in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Hands down, the best pizza in Buffalo, New York. I put my stamp of approval on it. Delicious sweet sauce pie, fantastic cheese to sauce ratio, delicious cup and char pepperoni. They make their own blue cheese. They're great people making great pizza. They just got finished doing an SPCA drive in May. They do things towards trying to knock out cancer in October. They do Toys for Tots come holidays. They're extremely generous. They're kind. They're hardworking, and they make a tremendous product. The online menu for One Pie Pizza can be found in the episode show notes, whether you're watching here on YouTube, whether you are listening on any one of the podcasting apps or platforms. Go check out that online menu. Get yourself some One Pie Pizza. They are legitimately tremendous. I'm not just saying it because they're a sponsor. They're a sponsor because that's how good they are. I wouldn't have partnered with them if I didn't wholeheartedly believe in the product and believe in them as human beings. So major kudos to them and their product. Get yourself some One Pie Pizza. Twitter handle is up there on the screen at One Pie Pizza WNY. Love them. Love the product. I haven't eaten dinner yet, and I'm super hungry. And that promo sent me down a path that I probably shouldn't have gone. I'm distracted by the hunger. Yeah, probably shouldn't have done that. Probably shouldn't have done that. But nonetheless, let's dive right into it. Let's go ahead first. Ken Dorsey and the Buffalo Bills offense. Ken Dorsey was a focal point this week at OTAs. And I wish there was some more depth to some of the questions that he was asked. I know it's early on, but I would have loved to hear some usage questions and some potential personnel questions for Mr. Ken Dorsey, who, a guy who hasn't really been in the spotlight a lot, hasn't really been in the limelight as a coach. Obviously he went to Miami and was a quarterback at the University of Miami, won a national championship, Heisman quarterback, like just tremendously productive there for several years down there in Miami, played with some great talented players. But a guy, as a coach, like has kind of faded into the background a little bit. And so it's nice to see him out in the forefront, getting some shine. And he had the longest presser this week, about 23 minutes, and really got to dive into some things. But what I thought was interesting, before we get to some of the things that Ken Dorsey said and how it ties into what we can expect from the Buffalo Bills offense this year in 2022, what I really thought was interesting before that was, so I watched Dorsey's presser last, and I watched Gabriel Davis's presser and Mitch Morse's presser before that. I want to grab this comment from Dwayne. This looks good. Dwayne says, Dorsey comes into this job with a huge advantage. He has Josh's trust. Dorsey comes with a huge disadvantage. Being a new OC, he has much to learn about game flow, might hurt us in game one. Very fair point on both sides. And that's something we're going to dive into. It's like you're looking at my notes and you can see behind the screen here. Good comment, Dwayne. What I thought was interesting from what Davis said and what Mitch Morse said, and even what Dorsey said himself a couple times, you kept hearing all the comments about how competitive Ken Dorsey is and how competitive he is. And he just literally competitive. They kept finding their way to continuously go back to the word. And at first I thought it was just kind of, generic presser speak and generic practice speak where you just, throw verbiage out there and it's like, I don't have any other thing to describe this guy, so I'm going to describe him with this. But once Morse and Gabriel Davis got comfortable in their pressers and they were just kind of just free flowing with thoughts and information, they kept using that word competitive. And then Ken Dorsey even said it as well, that, he mentioned how competitive he is. And some of the quotes directly, one from Mitch Morse, he said Ken Dorsey is, quote, a ferocious competitor. It's never malice. He wants to succeed and he wants us to succeed so bad. And then one of the other telling quotes, he said every once in a while, Dorsey gets so heated that, quote, the Holy Spirit comes out of him every once in a while. Then, he also mentioned that's why, they want him to be the OC calling plays up in the booth and not down on the sideline, because he's so competitive. They want him up there and away from the players and down on the sideline. Gabriel Davis, when talking about Ken Dorsey, used phrases like Ken Dorsey wants to attack every single play. Multiple times we heard Gabriel Davis state how Ken Dorsey wants big plays and attack and big plays and all this. So all these words and all these synonyms around being aggressive, being competitive, attacking, big plays, all these types of things. And good comment here from Jason. Jason saying Buffalo's going to have tons of positional rotations to throw other teams off with Dorsey as the OC. Yes, they got a lot of personnel potential, different packages, different schemes, a lot of ways to keep defenses off balance and keep them guessing. That is for sure. But we kept hearing about, how aggressive and how competitive Ken Dorsey is. And I thought that was very interesting. And then you pair that together with several things that Ken Dorsey said, who I really, despite the fact that there wasn't too much X's and O's talk, which again is understandable, I just really came away impressed with a lot of things that he said. And we're going to dive into some of those things and again, tie it back to that competitive and aggressive nature that he has and piece it all together in this first topic here of what that can mean for the Bills in 2022. And here's some quotes from Ken Dorsey. So one that I really enjoyed, Dorsey said, what I think the most successful coaches do is that they have that vision. So they have a vision for like what they want in terms of direction and philosophy. That's how he led this with when he talked about it, vision. But the direct quote is, what I think the most successful coaches do is they have that vision, but they're able to adjust and do some different things as the season unfolds and declares. The best coaches are the ones who are constantly evaluating what they're doing. When asked about his individual style or philosophy, he said his philosophy is, what do we have to do to win the game? And then later in the presser mentioned, again, quote, doing whatever we have to win, maximizing every tool in your tool belt. When you combine several of the things that Dorsey said, and a lot of it talked about, a lot of what Dorsey talked about was, being multiple and being varied in a lot of ways. And he just came down to like whatever we have to do to win. He talked about like, the game is simple. You just have to score one more point than your opponent. Sometimes it's 30, sometimes it's less, sometimes it's a field position game. Sometimes it's a shootout. Sometimes it's not. We talked about that level and balancing things like that. And another quote that I really liked that goes hand in hand with that, and this one was I just thought was really spot on from Dorsey. He said, quote, "I talk with the quarterbacks a lot of the philosophy or the intent of a play. So when you're calling something, it's important that the quarterback has to know why you're calling it. What's the intent of the reason why you're calling it, so they can make a good decision based off of that situation in the game." I love that one. I tweeted out that quote a couple days ago and made the joke of that analogy as, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime type thing. And I put all those things together, right? So Dorsey talking about making sure to know the intent of the play. And that's a big one, right? Like, it's not just you're calling this play just to call this play and try to get a first down. Like, what's the true intent of it? What's the intent of the reason why you're calling it? So that way the quarterback can make a good decision based off of that situation in the game. Dorsey is that type of offensive coordinator who's going to call things to be able to set things up for later in the game. He's going to call things in the first quarter and the second quarter, and then come back to similar looks later in the game or even later in the season and counter off of that. And when you think, oh, A's coming, A, boom, he's going to hit you with B, or he's going to hit you with C, or hit you with something that you have no idea. Like Jason said, Devin Singletary said in an interview that Dorsey's going to push a lot of trick plays, maybe using some standard or traditional personnel groupings or formations, and you throw in different looks or plays out of them. Again, that aggressive nature, that competitiveness. What I think it all boils down to, again, so making sure the quarterbacks know the intent of the play, which is fantastic, but you piece it together with that competitiveness. You piece it together with doing whatever you have to do to win, maximizing every tool in your tool belt. What do we have to do to win the game? The best coaches are the ones who are constantly evaluating what they're doing. What I think the most successful coaches do is they have their vision, but they're able to adjust and do different things as the season unfolds and declares. Maybe this is obvious for some, but just in case it's not, I expect to see a varied attack from the Buffalo Bills based on matchup, week to week, game to game situation. If the Bills are a pass-first team, cool. I think you could very easily see some games where maybe they're a run-first team, or the run is more impactful, or they have heavier run options in terms of the opponent that they're playing. Ken Dorsey seems very keyed in on attacking an opponent's weakness and keeping them off balance and using everything in your arsenal to beat your opponent, right? And now maybe everything in the arsenal for him is the passing arsenal. Maybe everything in the arsenal for him isn't 50-50 or 60-40 balance. Maybe it's just pure passing attack. But I expect to see a varying amount of play calling, personnel packages, situations, tempo, what he goes to, when he goes to it. I think you're going to see a varied attack and a differing attack every single week. Even if this Bills team is a pass-first team, I think the pinpointing of the weakness in an opponent and that matchup base is going to heavily dictate what this team is. And now I say that to say, if you come out, after week 2 or week 3 or whatever week, and you're like, I don't know why they're running so much these last couple weeks, or they're not passing the ball downfield, or they're only passing the ball downfield, they're taking too many deep shots, there's too much play action and too much vertical game, or man, we aren't using any 12 personnel, what's going on, or how come we don't use any 3 wide receiver sets the llast couple of weeks, so on and so forth. When you start to have these questions about the whys and the whats of what's going on, you got to connect it back to who was the previous opponent the Buffalo Bills played, and what were their weaknesses, and how can you attack those weaknesses? Did they have a team that likes to go lighter on defense in terms of personnel? Do they like to go nickel? And do they like to, exactly like Isaiah said, he said it's a long season. Do they like to go nickel? Do they like to go with 5 DBs or 6 DBs in dime? Do they like to go traditional, formations, and maybe they go 3 linebackers? Okay, so if they go 3 linebackers and that's their base formation, right? Maybe you want to go more 3 wide, 4 wide, spread them out, take advantage. Oh, you're playing a nickel defense? Okay, maybe you want to go more 12 personnel and try to, really work on that matchup and run the ball a little bit more. Okay, you got a team who's really super aggressive. Okay, maybe you want to go with more play action and, long drops. Is the defense playing too high or single high coverage? Are they a man coverage defense? Are they a zone coverage defense? All of these things, I expect the Bills offense to be very matchup driven. And when I say the offense to be matchup driven, I say that from the perspective of personnel groupings used and the specific play calls and the way the offense attacks a defense on any given week. You can say that about anybody, but you can see some teams change their game up more than others. To compare it to, what the Patriots did with Bill Belichick for so long, when it was so tough in fantasy football, the Patriots would have a different running back every week that would go off for so many years. And it was because Belichick every week, the offensive game plan was different based on the opponent. Oh, this team, really struggles to cover running backs out of the backfield from a receiving threat. Boom, this is going to be a James White week. Oh, this team isn't good with just traditional, ground and pound and being run straight at. Okay, cool. We're going to give the ball to Sony Michel. Like, they alternate. They flip things. It's always based on being so fluid and versatile and multiple that you're able to cater your game plan towards attacking the weaknesses of your opponent. We saw it a bit from Daboll the last several years, but we saw more in-game adjustments, I think, more than a complete variance game to game. I think, not ironically, but I think at times we saw Daboll kind of, beat his head against the wall a little too much and stay a little too stubborn in terms of holding to specific things. I think Dorsey is more just varying, changing it up, and again, seeing a matchup-based offense. Now, holistically, you can still look and say, well, there's still going to be a passing team, or they're still going to be run through Josh Allen. And I think that's correct, but don't get freaked out and don't get crazy if, again, the first 3 weeks, you're like, we really haven't seen any OJ Howard, or how come we're not using more Jamison Crowder? Or, I really thought James Cook was going to see a lot of action and he was scratched for the first 2 games, or he only saw 7 snaps, or, I really think Devin Singletary is the better runner between the two, but Singletary's seeing less snaps, or we're not running the ball more, so on and so forth. You always got to do this in general, but especially with Ken Dorsey and what it seems like he's trying to go for on offense, you have to take into account the opponent the Buffalo Bills are playing, and I think this is fantastic, right? You should always, if you have it in your tool belt, if you can maximize every tool, if you have that type of multiplicity and that fluidity and that versatility, right? If you can consistently adapt to attack your opponent and be, boom, great way to say it, from Dave Buffalo OPR, game plan specific. If you're that versatile and multiple that you can do that, that is beautiful. This goes back to an off-season adage of mine that I was pounding the table for when it came to the draft: rock, paper, scissors. Oh, cool. This defense is throwing paper this week. We're throwing scissors all game. Oh, cool. The next opponent that we play is really great at throwing scissors. Cool. We're throwing rock all game. Oh, this next opponent, they're throwing rock. Cool. We can throw paper too. And you just keep doing that. And you just keep doing that. You keep teams off balance and you attack them where they don't want to be attacked. If a team is throwing scissors, they do not want to see you throw rock. And if the Bills can throw all 3, that's a tremendous piece. I use that analogy and why I wanted the Bills to add a first-round corner like they did with Kyer Elam, that versatility, that multiplicity, that fluidity, right? All of those things are tremendously important. And with Ken Dorsey, you take what he's saying about, being attack-minded and how competitive he is and how he wants the big play. And again, some more quotes, doing whatever we have to do to win, maximizing every tool in your tool belt. What do we have to do to win the game? What I think the most successful coaches do is they have that vision, but they're able to adjust and do some different things as the season unfolds and declares. We know Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott are very forward-thinking. We know they like to play 4D and 5D chess when it comes to roster moves and team building and team development. I think this is good from Jonathan. Rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock. Well done. Nice reference. I'm excited for what Ken Dorsey can be. Now, to bring it back to the comment from earlier, I also want to preach some patience with Ken Dorsey. He's a first-time play caller. He's going to be up in the booth this year. He's used to being down there on the field. He's used to being with the players. A cool comment that he had as well, he talked about being on the sidelines in years prior as the QB coach. he got to see how guys react to certain situations, and that's going to help him call plays and put game plans together because he knows what the players are like in game. I thought that was tremendously insightful. A guy who's consistently taking from everything around him and trying to learn. Very smart, very intuitive, is Ken Dorsey. But we gotta give some patience. I don't know how many training wheels or if he's going to need training wheels coming out of the gate. We don't know if he's going to be able to walk right away. Does he have to crawl? And then even if he can walk, how long does it take him to run? That rhythm, that rapport, that feeling of being comfortable in the booth, calling plays, running the show yourself. That's a big thing. Now, what's nice for him, he's got Joe Brady as a QB coach who's very accomplished and has a strong track record of success, minus really his time in Carolina, which there was a lot of conflicting reports and, chaos that was that dumpster fire while he was there. He's got Aaron Kromer as an offensive line coach who has former coordinator experience and is a strong veteran. He's got good supporting players as coaches as peers on the offense. And then he's got the players in the roster that he has. So he's set up for success, but got to give some patience, got to see, how things come to light and how quickly he gets acclimated to that offensive coordinator game. Exactly. Isaiah, we're on the same page. He does have Kromer and Brady. Fantastic. And I'm excited to see what we get from Ken Dorsey. I think we all are. I think it's a mixture of, being excited and also being anxious, but I kept hearing from all these guys how competitive Ken Dorsey is, because I didn't know this prior. I didn't know how competitive Ken Dorsey is and how aggressive he is and competitive. They kept talking about it, competitive, and the Mitch Morse quote that that I mentioned earlier. Again, like the Holy Spirit comes out of him every once in a while, and this is a dude who gets fired up. And because he gets fired up because of how competitive he is. And you put it together again with what Gabriel Davis said, that Ken Dorsey wants to attack every single play. And several of the pieces and times when Gabriel Davis was spoken to, he kept finding ways to say big plays and big plays. And what do you think this offense is going to be? Big plays and attacking this and that, so on and so forth. Like the continued use of these words that really indicate that Ken Dorsey is put the foot on the gas pedal to the floor and attack. Now, that attack may look different every week based on the opponent, because you are playing your opponent. You got to play the man, right? You're going to dance with the girl that brought you and play to your strengths, but you also want to attack your opponent's weaknesses. You want to mitigate their strengths and expand upon and drive a knife into the heart of their weaknesses. I think Ken Dorsey is built for that, and I think that is what he's looking to go towards. So when it comes to the Buffalo Bills offense in 2022, I really expect to see a varied approach from week to week based on matchup, based on what their opponent does good, based on what their opponent does bad, and then turning up those dials and turning down some other ones and really trying to pinpoint, again, weaknesses. So, maybe turn up this dial towards 11, turn down this other dial towards 5, see what we do on a week-to-week basis until you really get into a rhythm. And then even so, again, as we march towards the playoffs, the Bills are a playoff team, and hopefully more than that, the playoffs are all about matchups and that rock, paper, scissors piece. Ooh, I know there was a lot of comments that were coming through, so let's go back to some of those comments. Wow, there's a lot of comments. I appreciate you guys so much. Oh, comment here from Isaiah saying, what got me about Dorsey? He's taking information from Kromer and Joe Brady, different ideas. Yeah, he seems very inclusive in terms of his approach and really gathering plenty of sample size and information from his peers. I like that a lot. Comment here from Dwayne. Dwayne says, I expect more called running plays, and I see more 2 tight end sets. I see more screens. I see more West Coast that forces safeties to move forward to open up deeper balls. I tell you, a big part in all this, and it's something I talked about with Nate Tice before the draft, which is an episode that everybody, I'm not saying it just because I was a part of it, but you should all genuinely check out. I sat down with Nate Tice, who's one of the best minds in football, to talk about the changing nature of NFL defenses and how the Bills can attack those changing NFL defenses. And if teams are going to continue to give the Bills 2 high looks and they're going to continue to play zone, this Bills offense is built, with guys like Gabriel Davis who can split those safeties and still get vertical over the top like they did against the Chiefs in the divisional round. That's one way to do it. Or you can attack that space underneath and force them to come up and have to honor that short and intermediate game, even though that's where they're trying to push you. Or again, you use formations like 2 tight end sets where you outgap the defense and you change the math a little bit and you make them have to bring a safety down into the box, because if not, they can't sit there with a light box or a 7-man box against a 2 tight end set when you have 2 tight ends hipped on the offensive line, and then you just have gaps for days. And then if you start going away from zone and you start going more gap scheme and you're shifting gaps and changing, that's a big advantage for the offense. So there's a lot of ways to counter what defenses were trying to do to the Bills last year. And the Bills are well equipped this year based on the additions they made this offseason to attack those defenses in a variety of ways. And when you combine it with an offensive-minded guy like Dorsey who's built on big plays and attacking and how competitive he is, yeah, I think he's about dictating to the defense and not being dictated to. What else? What do we got here? Coming in from Brandon, I think finally having the horses on the offensive line to have a true identity in the run game is going to do wonders for the offense, even if it isn't elite. I think that is very, very, very well said. Question here from Dave. Will everything with Ken Dorsey, will this affect Josh Allen's performance? He did much better. So in terms of him being on the sideline, he did much better when Brian came back down to the sideline. I think with having a QB coach like Brady and then having Barkley and Case Keenum and having those guys on the sideline and in his ear, I think that mitigates, if not removes, any negative impact of Dorsey potentially going up to the booth. But that's a fair question. But yeah, I think that's fair. Yeah, I feel you, Dwayne. Dwayne said, I got to ask, is it painful saying Josh Allen's name and then using the name Brady by that name? It 1,000% is. That's why I try to say Joe Brady and not just Brady. It legitimately, it pains me. Oh, what's up, Lone Wolf? Lone Wolf says, as a long-time Bills fan, I have no more patience. I think that's fair. Yeah, and as Jonathan said, with Ken Dorsey, it sounded like he wants to win 70-3 every week, plus or minus the opponent. Yeah, he wants to put up points and he wants to beat opponents into the dirt. What else? Yeah, comment here from Sal. Dorsey going for the throat the whole game, and he has the personnel to do it. Ooh, another comment here. Interesting. I don't think we take a setback like most people think, but I think Ken will do somewhat better than Dable because he was too constricted. Interesting. It could be. I think a lot of it's going to come down to if, Dable was restricted, what was restricting him? Was it himself? Was it the direction of Sean McDermott? How much? That's also a fair question too, right? Like how much freedom does Ken Dorsey have, right? He's got the keys to the car. How much is he able to drive it? Can he drive it down any street? Can he park it wherever he wants? Can he drive it anywhere in the neighborhood? Can he go to a different town? Can he go to a different state? Can he drive on the thruway? Does he only have to stay local? I think that's a fair question to have when it comes to Ken Dorsey, just how much he's able to really truly drive the car, or is there rules attached to him driving the car, or is there someone riding, next to him or backseat driving for him? I think that's a fair piece and thing to consider. How much is he really able to drive that car freely? So I'll be like Dave here. Dave says only 33 likes. Come on, guys, do better. Smash the like. Yeah, guys. Come on, guys. Help myself and the entire Cover One team to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears, please, and thank you. Appreciate you guys. Thank you guys so much. And also thank everybody. We're starting to get more people piling in. Appreciate you guys joining me on this Thursday night. That isn't the normal time for Disguise coverage. Again, we moved to accommodate the match last night for Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers. But here we are. I've got some good attendance. I appreciate you guys. Oh, yeah. Comment here from Jason. Is Dorsey driving a Chevy Chevette or a Camaro? We'll see. Yeah. I'm very excited to see what it's going to be. Nice comment here from Jonathan. Kromer, in my humble opinion, will be the most influential piece that changes our offense this year. Kromer is the key to success, and I believe, BILL, he's the perfect coach to maximize this line. I said it on Twitter last week. I said it on the film room this week. I think the easy, low-hanging fruit, if you're talking about the best addition this offseason for the Buffalo Bills, is Von Miller. I would not be surprised if next year at this time we're looking back on 2022 and saying the best addition this offseason was Aaron Kromer. Not just for 2022, but for what it could mean potentially going forward. I I truly believe in that. Again, a guy who maximizes strengths, mitigates weaknesses, raises floors, raises ceilings, has a proven track record of teaching and instilling fundamentals in a variety of teams with a variety of players, with a variety of skill sets in a variety of times in their careers and playing experience, all of that. I love the Kromer signing 1000%. I'm very excited for what it means for this team. And again, a better offensive line means a better protected Josh Allen and a better run game potentially. And if you got time for your quarterback and you can also run the ball at will, that's a tough thing. Like the Bills need to run the ball to be successful. I'm saying it right now. Like as the offense started to take a turn last year positively, it coincided not, by some ironic coincidence, it coincided with them having a pivot and being able to run the football. The Bills need that. The Bills have to have the threat of the run. No team can come out and just pass it every single down where the defense knows they're going to pass it. You have to have some sort of pivot. The easiest pivot to get to is the run game, right? Especially if the Bills are going to keep seeing light boxes, attack them, make them pay for giving you light boxes, make them have to bring up another defender, and then you can really go for the throat when it comes to the passing game. So yeah, I'm very excited for what Coach Kromer brings to the team. And let's dive right into that, second subject, since we're talking about Aaron Kromer. Mitch Morse and the Buffalo Bills O-line. I love Mitch Morse. I think he's fantastic. I think he's very underrated by Bills fans. He gets more love in the national media and spotlight, but by Bills fans, I think he's underrated. It was nice to hear from him in OTAs and some of the key takeaways. He talked about Rodger Saffold, nice veteran addition, going to be starting at left guard. And he talked about how Saffold has clocked in a bunch of hours. He's seen pretty much anything or pretty much everything. He's very forthcoming and generous with his knowledge and information, and he's got a good dialogue with him, and Saffold has a good dialogue in general. Morse also spoke on Ken Dorsey, as Gabriel Davis did as well. And Mitch Morse said that Dorsey is hands-on and a great delegator, and he's merging what we had before with his vision. Then he talked about Coach Kromer, who we just started to dive into a little bit here, and he said Kromer tries to work to everyone's strengths and advantages. He won't coach two players the same because they're different physiologically. I thought that was super, super important from like an actual player testimonial perspective, because I can sit here and tell you what I've seen on film from the different Coach Kromer coached teams. I can tell you what, I've watched and seen and heard and read when it comes to clinics that Coach Kromer has spoken at, all these pieces and all these things. And it just hits a little different when you have a current player on the team who is speaking to that right away. Like a proven guy. Mitch Morse is a tremendous center, and he's a proven guy in this league, not just on the Bills, but in this league. And you've already got a new coach coming in, and he's speaking to several of the things that Coach Kromer is known for, like things that have followed him from team to team is, again, that ability to work to everyone's strengths and advantages, and that he won't coach two players the same. He recognizes, player A and player B are differently, either mentally, physically, not just their position, but their skill sets, their strengths, their weaknesses, everything. So he's not going to coach you and I the same if you and I are two different players, because what works for me might not work for you and vice versa. That's part of the beauty of Coach Kromer, his versatility and how fluid he is in his approach. He's got his core fundamentals and his principles and his values and his beliefs, but he's able to tweak and stay fluid, and he's able to merge his system and his structure with the players that he has. It is the opposite of, not to throw shade on anyone, is the opposite of Rex Ryan. Rex Ryan came in to the Buffalo Bills, and the Bills were a 4-3 team. The Bills had that cold front with Mario Williams and Jerry Hughes and Kyle Williams, that 4-3 defense. And Rex Ryan came in and was like, nope, I run a 3-4. And I was like, yeah, but this team is really built to, be a 4-3 defense. Nope, I run 3-4. I'm going to do a ton of blitzing, ton of zone blitzes, crazy games and schemes up front, organized chaos, man coverage on the back end. And I was like, yeah, but like the Bills have no, I run a 3-4. Rex Ryan took a square peg of a defense and tried to fit it into the round hole that was his structure and scheme. His structure and scheme was not bad. It was tremendous with New York for a while. It was good in Baltimore. Granted, both of those teams had some studs on those defenses, but he had a proven track record, right? The issue was with those previous teams, he had players who fit the scheme that he had. He didn't have that in Buffalo. But what did he do? Instead of tailoring his game plan and tailoring his scheme to fit what he had, he tried to swap it. He tried to take square pegs and fit them into a round hole, and it didn't work. And then you have guys like Mario Williams talking about, like, why am I dropping into coverage so much? And how come I'm not rushing? And just guys who were playing more quote unquote out of position after they had success year after year under Jim Schwartz. They just came off a tremendously successful year. It wasn't even like the Bills defense was bad before Rex Ryan. They had a good defense. You could hang your hat on it. And he comes in and he wants to change everything up, right? And that can work. And that doesn't mean that he's a bad coach, but a truly good coach, again, to tie it back to what Ken Dorsey said earlier, good coaches, they have their vision, but they're able to adjust and do some different things, right? And he was talking about, himself as a coordinator and what good coaches do, but I tie it to what Coach Kromer is able to do. He's able to adapt his system and his scheme and his teachings and his philosophies and his fundamentals. He's able to make them fit the personnel that he has. He's not trying to take square pegs and put them into round holes. He's got a square peg and he's going to find a way to create a round hole and work towards you, right? He's going to be able to, again, raise your floor, raise your ceiling, mitigate your weaknesses, maximize your strengths. This offensive line is going to take a big jump this year. I'm very excited for it. And it's nice to hear already, again, early on in camp, Mitch Morse talking about those pieces. Again, we're early in the offseason. We've just started OTAs. We haven't even fully gotten into training camp yet. And Mitch Morse is already talking about several of the calling cards and staples of Aaron Kromer's coaching style and coaching ability already being showcased already. We talked about it last week on the show, right? Tommy Doyle was getting work at guard, and everybody was like, oh, does this mean Tommy Doyle's going to be a guard? Is Tommy Doyle going to be a guard? And I was like, no. That's what Coach Kromer likes to do. He likes to take guys from different positions and work them in amongst other positions that they don't play on the offensive line to get them experience just for themselves, but also to be able to have a fundamental core holistic understanding of the offensive line completely, right? So if you're a tackle, you can work better with your guard if you know what it's like to play guard. If you're a guard and you've played tackle, you know what it's like to work with that tackle. If you're looking at a stunt or different games up front or a box and you're sitting there and going like, okay, well, I know this is going to be tough for my right tackle here because, I played tackle a little bit and I know what that's like. What can I do to be sound in my assignment and also help out my teammate right here, right? All these types of fundamentals and values that he stacks, builds that core foundation, right, with fundamentals, and then stacks and really builds the house and puts everything together. And I'm really, really excited for what Coach Kromer means for this team. And again, to hear Mitch Morse already, talking about him positively. And again, talking about the things that Coach Kromer is known for. It's nice that he brought those things with him and it's showing early, and we're getting that return on investment early. And again, not to, overshadow the piece on Rodger Saffold. I think it was very key, or very interesting, like the key words that Morse chose when talking about Rodger Saffold, especially saying, he's clocked in a bunch of hours and he's very forthcoming and generous with knowledge and information, and there's good dialogue. Having solid guard play next to you as a center is tremendously important. The Bills have not been a revolving door, but they've been a roller coaster when it comes to guard play the last several years, right? And I'm not giving Mitch Morse a pass at all, but it's hard to be able to function in your duties as a center when you've got that inconsistency at guard play. He was having to overcompensate for guard play time after time, game after game. Having a solid vet who's still a good player in Rodger Saffold, but having somebody who's seen a lot and who's clocked a lot of hours, as Mitch Morse says, and then more importantly, who's able to speak about it, who has that dialogue, who's very, quote, forthcoming and generous with knowledge and information. Having that good chemistry from an on-field play perspective is important, but having that, rapport verbally and mentally is just as important. So seeing that already from Rodger Saffold is good for the entire offensive line, but it's very good for Mitch Morse. If we can see Mitch Morse play a little freer, I think, again, Rodger Saffold has that potential to unlock Mitch Morse a little bit because he's not going to be, hampered or held down, not to be disrespectful to anyone, but either hampered or held down by the guard play. Instead, the Bills might have some guard play that allows Morse to elevate and unlock and play a little freer because he's not having to overcompensate for the players next to him, which is very interesting. Oh, I see a lot of comments, which we're going to go back and get to. But first, I see a super chat from Dwayne. Thank you so much for the donation, Dwayne, and for being here. I really appreciate you, man. Dwayne says, a big if, but if our running game opens up to Singletary taking another step better, or I'm confused. Hold on, let me reread this as I take a drink. Rephrase this. I'm confused as I'm reading it. But if our running game opens up, do Singletary take another step better, or the dynamic James Cook working out early season? Oh boy, rephrase. I think there's an extra word or missing one. You don't have to do another super chat, obviously, but just type it, retype it, because I feel like I'm confusing myself as I read it. But I'm going to leave it up for now as I go back and scroll through some comments here. Comment here from William. Who do you think is going to be the slot receiver? I think you're going to see James Crowder early on. Hold on. Let me pause and go back to Dwayne here. But if our running game opens up due to Singletary being better this year, or the dynamic of James Cook working out early season, oh boy, I think that's fair. And I mentioned it. I don't know. I've done so many shows this offseason. Right now, Devin Singletary is the better runner. I think you're still going to see a solid mix of Devin Singletary, who looked good as RB1 down the stretch last year, right? But that James Cook dynamic is so fun. That receiving ability, that isn't just a receiving ability out of the backfield. That's a genuine, let me flex you out into the slot or out wide and have you run receiver routes and actual patterns and have an actual route tree. Goodness gracious, what's going on? I read Dwayne. I read your comment of I missed the the 2. I'm falling apart. It's Thursday. I'm not in rhythm, not in routine, but it's the off season. I'll get better. I'll study the tape of this episode and get better. But I appreciate you. Yeah, if the running game opens up, it's huge for this offense. If defenses have to honor the threat of the run when playing the Buffalo Bills, that helps Josh Allen. If defenses cannot just solely prepare for Josh Allen during the week and the Bills passing attack, if they can't just key in on the passing attack in game, man, I want the Bills to have a running game. I've said it the last several years. I said it last year. This doesn't mean they have to be 50-50 balance. I like a 60-40, 65-35 at worst, but you just need to be effective whenever you run the football. The threat has to be there, the constant threat. So defenses have to know in the back of their mind, yeah, but if they run it, that's all you need. That's just what you need. And you just need to be effective when you do it. You can't have defenses be like, well, who cares if they run the ball? They can't run. You don't want that. If the Bills can run, it's a big thing. Oh, question here from Brandon. Brandon said, I've seen a lot of Titan fans say Saffold really struggled in pass pro last year. Do you know if this was a problem with technique, the shoulder injury, his surroundings, or just a drop in production? And then Brandon said, or if that's not really true, I didn't watch a lot of Titans games. So I dove into the Saffold film once the signing happened, and I will say he's a better run blocker than he is a pass protector. You see it's weird because in run blocking, you see more athleticism and explosiveness to his game, but in the pass protection, you don't see it. There were times when he struggled with stunts and he struggled with two-man games. His footwork got a little sloppy. He's not giving him a pass. He's a big guy. Like he's a mauling, big offensive guard. So he's not the most fleet of foot, and he's a little bit older. I think he's like 33 or 34. So he's got some miles on those tires. So he's not the most fleet of foot. When he struggles in pass protection, it's from an athleticism or a footwork perspective, right? If the defensive line runs a stunt, right? And so he takes that defensive tackle, but he just gets a little too much to his left and leaves too much space for that looping defensive end. He doesn't have the foot speed or the athleticism to quickly shuffle over and get there and make a play, right? If he gets his hands on you, it's a win. He's got strong hands. He's got a good punch. He's got violent hands, and he's got good technique to control you once he gets his hands on you, which is part of the reason why he's going to succeed in Aaron Kromer offense, because Kromer is all about making that first contact, getting your hands to that defensive lineman and control, right? Offensive lineman, your hands control and your legs move. So getting your hands and getting them in good position, getting a good solid punch and being in control of that rep is very key for any offensive lineman, but that's one of the core foundational pieces for Coach Kromer. Once Saffold gets his hands on you in the run or the pass, he's usually good. But if he gets put out in space and you can get him kind of moving side to side where he has to rely more on footwork and has to rely more on athleticism, that's where he struggles at times. Again, the pass protection was never his calling card, but he was sufficient. I think he's still sufficient, but that is definitely the weaker area of his game compared to his run blocking, but he's not deficient. But yeah, he will struggle from time to time because of some limited athleticism and pass protection combined with the footwork aspect. A lot of comments. Going back to that comment from earlier, the slot receiver. I think Crowder is going to start out as the slot guy, and you're going to mix in McKenzie as well. If Shakir, actually, we're going to talk about the receivers in a little bit. So why not? Why not just go do that? Why not just talk about the receivers? Because you know what I got? I got a banner. This is punters and wide receivers, but we'll flip it and we'll talk about the wide receivers first. When it comes to the slot receivers, I think it'll be Crowder and McKenzie to start out the year. I like what James Crowder brings. I would rather have Cole Beasley, but James Crowder is not a bad replacement at all. I'm excited for what Crowder can be in this offense, and I like the rotational piece with Isaiah McKenzie. Khalil Shakir didn't participate too much in OTAs this week. He picked up an injury, as did Isaiah Hodgins, which, to touch on that real quick, I'm really hoping Isaiah Hodgins can be something, but he got knocked with injury in the preseason last year, and it hindered his opportunity to make this team, and now he's picked up a knock again. He needs every opportunity he can get, whether it's OTAs, whether it's training camp, whether it's regular practice, whether it's games and preseason. He needs every single rep to be able to showcase his ability. So I was really disappointed to hear about Isaiah Hodgins picking up an injury and having to sit out. Khalil Shakir, we're going to talk about in a minute, but Marquez Stevenson for the second week in a row. So again, week 2 in OTAs this week. He struggled with drops again, as he did last week. He's just got a lot of inconsistency. Again, we're just talking about wide receivers. I think if Marquez Stevenson is making this team, it's as a returner. It means he's winning that return game. But wanted to use those guys first and then go to Khalil Shakir. He's somebody who I think could win the returner duties. I think he could be your starting kick returner and punt returner to start the year. I know the talk is it's a battle between McKenzie and Stevenson, but Jason Shakir is injured. I don't think they haven't disclosed what it fully is, but he sat out and had a wrap on his calf or his leg. I don't think it's too serious. I think it's just, an OTA knock and, you're running around and you're starting to get used to being in game shape and actually playing ball again. So I don't think it's anything too significant as of now, knock on wood, but nonetheless, he did miss time this week and sit out. But Shakir is someone who James Crowder has an injury history. Isaiah McKenzie has never handled full-time wide receiver 3 duties. I think Khalil Shakir, if healthy, could genuinely, there you go, Dwayne. Shakir has a lower leg injury. I think Khalil Shakir is a guy who, by the end of the year, could be seeing significant slot snaps. I'm talking in like a starting fashion in a. Gotta stop. Got a super chat here from Jessica. See the color? Flat. Jessica says, Mike Shula's role. Dorsey security blanket. I actually have, as I pull some notes there. I think when you get a guy like Mike Shula, who, he's been around so long. He's got plenty of coaching experience at the NFL and the college level. I don't know if he's going to be, as I pull my headphone out of my ear there, if he's going to be Dorsey's security blanket. I don't know if anybody really will be, but I like that he's on the staff. I think it's another point in the direction of Joe Brady, who's younger, but has that experience, right, with LSU, even as experience as an offensive coordinator with the Carolina Panthers the last couple of years, right? So you've got Joe Brady, who's got experience. You've got Aaron Kromer, who's got experience and is also a veteran and has seen a lot. Then you had somebody like Mike Shula, and you give him that, senior offensive assistant title or role, however you want to phrase it with your verbiage. I think it's just another person to be another guiding hand for Ken Dorsey. There's a lot I think a lot of people are just focusing on the play calling piece of being an offensive coordinator, but Dorsey even said it several times in the presser this week. He talked about making sure that he said, quote, that he's made a concerted effort to be in each position grouping room so he can let people know what makes him tick. He's got a lot of familiarity with the players, but this is a guy who previously, week to week, he was in the quarterback room. He was attached to Josh Allen's hip on game day, and he was in the rooms during the week watching film and breaking down tendency and game plan and funneling things from Dable. As the offensive coordinator now, you have to have your hand everywhere. You have to touch in with the quarterbacks and the wide receivers and the tight ends and the offensive line and all of those coaches. The only person you're reporting to now is Sean McDermott instead of being one of several position coaches and reporting to the guy who runs the offense. You are now the one that everybody has to report to. So having another person on staff like Mike Shula, who, again, he's handled a variety of duties in a variety of leadership capacities, even just there's so many. I was pulling up. I was going to read off his history as a coach, but it's literally super long. He's had a variety of assistant positions, but then he's been an offensive coordinator with the Buccaneers, quarterbacks coach with the Jags, quarterbacks coach with the Panthers, offensive coordinator for the Panthers, offensive coordinator for the Giants, quarterbacks coach with the Broncos. He is a well-traveled veteran, much in a similar vein of Kromer, even though he doesn't have that higher level track record and resume like Kromer does of success. But he's well traveled. He knows his stuff. I think the Mike Shula piece is, I guess it's going to depend on what you want to quantify as security blanket. I know Dwayne says that Dorsey's security blanket was learning from Dable last year. I think it's just another guy to continue to be able to keep things running smoothly on the offense. Another experienced person to be another guiding hand, to be a peer and a partner to Ken Dorsey, who's someone who, again, is a first-time OC and is handling play calling duties, but also first-time guy handling being the head guy for an entire unit. There's a big difference between being a position coach versus being a coordinator, and everybody reports to you. You have to account for every piece of that unit, game planning, tie everything together, put a nice bow on it, make sure everything's nice and clean. So having another guy like Shula there, you reduce some friction. You've got somebody who knows what they're doing. You have somebody who you don't have to micromanage. We know from what Mitch Morse said, Ken Dorsey likes to delegate. So having a person who he can delegate to and can carry out tasks and assignments instead of being like, well, I told this guy to do this. Hopefully he does it, fingers crossed. You have another guy, Mike Shula, who you have faith in because of the track record and resume that he brings with him. So I think it's another positive. Again, veteran coach, good experience on a staff is never a bad thing, especially with a first-time offensive coordinator. What else? So wide receiver talk as we were diving into there. I think Shakir could legitimately see starter snaps by the end of the year if he stays healthy, especially with Crowder's injury history. But even without it, I just really love Shakir's fit. I love what he offers. I think he's got more outside potential, even as a rookie, than people talk about because of his size and his release package that he's showcased on tape and shown in games. He's got about 34% of his career snaps have come on the outside, so he's got experience there. Although I think early on in the majority of his career, he'll be primarily a slot guy. But I look for Shakir to win return duties in the training camp and preseason, which honestly could hinder his offensive and wide receiver work. We know that Sean McDermott likes to have his returner just be the returner. When Andre Roberts was the returner, it was easy because he wasn't really a receiver, even though he was on the depth chart. But Isaiah McKenzie wasn't too involved in the offense when he was the primary return guy. So if Shakir is the primary return guy, maybe that works against him and limits what he can be on offense because McDermott just wants to view him and value him as just a returner. So who knows from that piece, but I'm a little disappointed that Shakir got knocked again. I think it's okay. But I expect him to be a piece in this offense. Now, when it comes to targets and usage rate and all that kind of stuff, I think that's up in the air. We really got to see what this offense is. Shakir's never played it down in the NFL, and Ken Dorsey's never called plays in the NFL before and put game plans together and done install and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of variables to to be had right now. But I am excited for what Shakir can be. And I'm disappointed that Hodgins got knocked because I think he's really on the bubble. And then one of the other receivers I wanted to talk about, Mr. Gabriel Davis. Davis was asked, in his presser this week, and he spoke decently, like 7-8 minutes, asked about what his expectations were for this year, or what he wanted to show. And he talked about being out there for about 70 to 80 plays a game and executing at a high level. He was also asked what will complete him as a wide receiver this year. And Gabriel Davis talked about route running, reading coverages, and winning contested catches. Another good question for him, he was asked, what did Emmanuel Sanders help him unlock in his game last year? And Davis talked about how he was doing a lot of standing up in his stance at the line of scrimmage, and then he wasted time getting out of that stance. So Emmanuel Sanders helped him to stay low and be strong and, not giving defensive backs his chest and allowing them to get into his body to reroute him. Some other things, he talked about how we saw a lot of press coverage at UCF, which I thought that was very key and interesting as well. Gabriel Davis continues to just impress with the things that he says, and I look for him to take a big jump this year. I think he's locked in as wide receiver 2. I think he's built for it in a variety of ways. I like that he mentioned, what will complete him as a wide receiver this year. He talked about his route running, reading coverages, and contested catches, all areas that he improved on and was proficient in as the season ended last year. When I really dove into the tape, the 2021 tape, I was impressed with what he was as a route runner. He started adding nuance in his footwork, in his shoulder direction, in head fakes, selling inside and then going outside. He started to win with his route running, which when you add it to a guy with his frame and his speed and his size, that's a very important and powerful thing. So I like that he, mentioned, route running is one of the things that will complete him this year as a wide receiver, because it's an area, again, that he showed improvement in last year. And if he can take a jump, that's big. And again, he's going to see all these vacated snaps and targets from Cole Beasley being gone and Emmanuel Sanders being gone. And something that also really helps Gabriel Davis, and that I mentioned a lot this offseason, is his blocking ability, his ability to function in the run game. You've got a receiver who can crack down on edges, who can dig out linebackers and safeties, who can sell, run, and then get out into a route and play action. He's a guy who really opens you up for versatility and multiplicity on offense, and provides a guessing game for the defense. He's a mismatch on offense because of what he is in the run blocking game, as well as his receiving game. And so it was really nice to hear him again talk about route running and reading coverages and contested catches, because those are the areas where he can continue to get better and he can continue to grow. His frame is going to be there, his size, his height, his strength, his speed, that doesn't seem like it's going anywhere, but being able to add some of the more technical aspects of his game, in addition to the big plays and the highlight reel catches that he's made, I think is a really important piece. And to know that, again, much like what we talked about last week with Gregory Rousseau, what he pinpointed in his game are the things that truly will take his game to the next level, talking about secondary and counter moves in the pass rush game, and being able to set things up in the first half and being able to come back and use that in crunch time to execute and finish games off. Gabriel Davis going with a similar piece, like that nuance, that technicality piece, like these guys who are trying to add new layers and new dynamics and levels to their game. Very exciting for Gabriel Davis. And honestly, he needs to hit, because after Gabriel Davis, there's question marks. Like I mentioned, Crowder is good, but carries an injury tag with him. He hasn't played more than 600 snaps the majority of the last several years. He gets dinged up a fair amount. So if he stays healthy, he's a weapon. But how productive will he be even if he is healthy? Is he going to be healthy? After him, Isaiah McKenzie. Is he a guy who you feel like you can really lean on to, shoulder wide receiver 3 duties? Can he fully progress and be more than just a niche or a gadget guy? How complete of a receiver is he to be wide receiver 3? And then after him, is it Khalil Shakir, who is a rookie and completely unproven? Is it Marcus Stevenson, who is going into his second year but is almost just as unproven? Is it Isaiah Hodgins, who's going into his third year and is completely unproven and has picked up a knock again because he's been injured in his first couple of years and has never seen the field? there's more questions at wide receiver that I think we are talking about or really going with. And so having Gabriel Davis continue to rise in his game and really be a stabilizing force as wide receiver 2 is very important for this team. Then I also have punters up there. I know it may be crazy to be like, oh man, we're going to talk about punters for a segment, but I want to just add in this piece of, Matt Ariza, all the punt god memes and jokes and all that stuff. He did have issues in college with his hang time. So something I talked about in the post-draft breakdown shows that me and Mr. Kendall Mursky did, I compared Matt Ariza to punter Johnny Hekker, who's been consistently one of the best punters in the NFL for the last several years. And then I also compared his numbers to A.J. Cole for the Raiders, who was the all-pro first-team punter last year. Hekker had both of them beat in yards per attempt, return percentage, net yards per punt, all of it was for Matt Ariza, but hang time, he was significantly down. So Matt Ariza's career average hang time is 3.85 seconds. Johnny Hekker's is 4.38, and AJ Cole's last year was 4.33. So basically a full half a second less, which I know to people can seem like, well, it's only half a second. Like, is that even really a big deal? Yeah, because with how fast returners are, a half second can be an extra 5 yards. And if you get an extra 5 yards, who knows if you've outkicked your coverage, maybe you have the potential to take those extra 5 yards and turn it into an extra 15 or a house call, right? Hang time is important. And I think a lot of things get lost in the distance aspect of Matt Ariza. He can boom it. That is for sure. He's got a cannon for a leg, right? But hang time is still tremendously important. Distance isn't everything. It's not the sole, one ring to rule them all for a punter. It's important. Distance is important. There's no doubt about that. But so is hang time. So is placement. And a good punter maximizes all three. A good punter maximizes distance, hang time, and placement. And just talking about distance and hang time, more distance but less hang time equals potentially outkicking your coverage, and that's not good. If you boom it from your 20 to the opponent's 20, oh man, that's a huge punt. That's amazing, right? But if you've outkicked your coverage and now all of a sudden you've created like a mini runway for a returner, or you didn't angle this kick properly at the same time, your net, that's the big part. The key, right, is the net. If you kick it from your 20 to the opponent's 20, but the returner takes it to the 35, that's not as good of a punt. Even though you boomed it from the 20 to the 20, cool, that's awesome. It's all about the net, right? And part of the net, it's not just distance. That hang time piece is there. You can't outkick your coverage. And Ariza, from reports early on, are that he's losing the hang time battle to Matt Hawk. Yes, he's winning the distance battle, but he's losing the hang time battle. And may seem silly to think about, or even talk about punters in general, but special teams are a third of the game. They're tremendously important. And with how good the Bills' offense and defense should be, they cannot afford any slip-ups when it comes to special teams. You cannot allow poor special teams play to give an opponent momentum or take away your momentum. A horrible punt, a shank, or a big return for an opponent is easy momentum for a team, and especially for a fan base. Like if you're the away team, if the Bills are away and you shank one, crowd starts getting into it. Even if they're down by a lot, they get into it. Or that you give up a big return, the team starts feeling it, the crowd starts feeling it. Even if you're the home team, the team starts feeling it. Like big plays from special teams get teams and fans going, right? Can't afford to have any slip-ups. So, and yeah, fair point to Ronald, Matt Hawk's hang time means nothing when he booms at 15 yards. That's just it. Like Hawk struggles with the inconsistency. He might pull off like a 48-yard punt that was picture perfect. And you're like, oh my goodness, what an amazing punt from Matt Hawk. And then the next time he comes out, he hits a 15-yarder. It's, and yeah, to Dwayne's point as well, you have to look at it the other way though. I'll take 60-yard punts with 15-yard returns over 20-yard shanks. Oh, 1,000%. Like, nobody wants the shanks, but if Matt Hawk can cut down on the shanks, but also to the point, like if you're taking a punter in the 6th round, if you're drafting a punter, I think it's almost safe to assume that punter is making the team. But I just want to kind of set those expectations for Matt Ariza because I think people see the distance and they think, oh my God, this guy can punt so far. He punts so far, but take that hang time piece into account. I really like the leg that Ariza has, and I think he's got a lot of potential, but you already know that he's starting to have to work on those hang time pieces. It's something that we've seen some clips of him already working on. But that hang time piece is important because, it's not just about the 60-yard punt with the 15-yard returns. It's the 60-yard punts that lead to the 15-yard returns that turn into touchdowns or even bigger gains. And again, that net, like that's still a 45-yard net. That's good. But how many times can you keep doing that before it bites you a little bit? You're starting to stress your unit. You're starting to stress the group. I still like Matt Ariza. I don't want anybody to take that as a negative and be like, man, he thinks Ariza's terrible, so on and so forth. No, but he's got a cannon for a leg. He's got that distance on lock. Just don't underestimate the importance of hang time and placement. And both of those areas he's starting to work on, and he has to work on. And, to play devil's advocate, there were 2 other punters that went ahead of him. And if you want to start to poke holes and ask, why did 2 other punters go ahead of him? If he's such an amazing punter, why did 2 other punters go ahead of him, right? Maybe there's something to that. Again, I like Matt Ariza. Just think about that hang time piece. Just think about that placement piece because the hang time piece is legitimate. Again, average hang time in his career in college of below 4 seconds, that's a short time in the air. Granted, he's booming it, but that's a long time, or I'm sorry, a short time in the air when your career average hang time is 3.8 seconds. And again, it's only a half a second lower than some other guys. That half second makes a difference when it comes to your kick coverage. And to Jason's point here, he says, but how often does Buffalo punt? Hopefully never. But that's a fair point. Fair point there. But that's exactly it too, though. Like, how often do they punt? When they do punt, you just want it to be sufficient. That's it. Like, I don't even need somebody who booms at 50 yards. I would take Matt Hawk if he was just consistent. Give me a consistent 42-yard punt every time. I don't want the 50-yarder and then the 20-yarder. Just give me a consistent amount every single time. That's it. Just be consistent. That's all you need from special teams. It's nice when you have the special teams that break off big runs or a punter who booms one and all those type of, big splash plays, right? That make highlights as a special team. That's awesome. But just give the consistency. When you have an offense that's good and a defense that's good, just be consistent in your special teams. Don't be deficient. Don't be a vulnerability. That's all the Buffalo Bills special teams unit needs to do. Whoever the punter is, just be consistent. Give some good distance with some hang time. Boom. Right? That's it. And also to Jason's point, yeah, Ariza is still young in his career, so he's still learning on the job, and now he's learning on the job in the NFL. But again, got a cannon for a leg, but he does have some things to work on. I think it's very important to set those expectations for and bars for people and players coming in, so we don't get these incorrect views of people when they come in, right? That's how you get to the Tremaine Edmonds level where somebody gets drafted and everybody thinks he's going to be Luke Kuechly, and when he's not Luke Kuechly, everybody's upset. Or Ed Oliver, who's had a really good career so far, but he's not Aaron Donald, so you still have people that say Ed Oliver's a bust, right? Setting those proper expectations and setting that proper bar based on objectivity and based on realism, that's a key point for everyone. So Matt Ariza is working on some stuff, but again, got a cannon, very exciting, but he does have to work on that hang time. He does have to work on the angling of punts. And I think it's crazy to think we're going to have a punter battle. Good comment, Jason. Ariza is the wild thing of the NFL. Yeah, like Ricky Vaughn. Comment here from Ronald. Oliver is the most underrated player on the Bills defense. He might be. Yeah, he might be, considering depending on how you define underrated. I think he's phenomenal. But I guess depending on how you define, like how productive they are versus what people like, how much people talk about them or how much coverage or spotlight they get, like that's fair. That's very fair. That's a very interesting debate. Comment here from Troy. Troy says a bad hold can easily lose a game. A bad punt is a loss of field position. Very true. We have to see how Matt Ariza holds. Who, all jokes aside, Matt Hawk is tremendous in the hold game. And when Eric Turner and I had Jay Feely on in the film room this past year, Jay Feely, former Pro Bowl kicker, now CBS analyst for the NFL, I didn't even know this. He talked about how like the slightest degree off in a hold can make him lose a kick. His exact words were something to the tune of, a bad holder can make a good kicker miss every kick. And I didn't realize it was that like serious and dramatic. I knew like the hold was important, but I didn't realize like a bad hold can make a good kicker miss every kick. Like I didn't know that. And I guess it makes sense. And he was talking about like the fine degrees. Like if you're not holding it at like the difference between like a 45 degree, and granted these aren't the proper degrees, but like the difference between like a 45 degree and a 46 degree is the difference between like a make or a miss. I had no idea it was that fine of a science. So yes, to Ronald's point, ask Mason Crosby. Question here from William. What receiver is going to be cut? I think it's more of who makes practice squad and who doesn't. I think as of right now, Hodgins is really on the bubble. Marcus Stevenson's really on the bubble. And then everybody below them even more so. I think the only sure things we know at the receiver position are Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, Crowder, and Isaiah McKenzie. I think everything else is kind of not toss-up, but kind of toss-up in terms of where they fall on this depth chart. I think Stevenson's on the bubble with his drops, where he was drafted last year. And if he doesn't really sure things up in the return game, I don't know how he fits in on this offense given the dropsies that he's had so far to start this year, which isn't good. But he's electric in the return game. You know, he had a touchdown versus the Bears while he hurt himself on the play and still outran everybody. So maybe he offers game ability in that regard. And so he makes the team, even though it's not as a receiver, but he is a receiver. But I think everybody is a question mark in terms of making the team, practice squad, or how much they're going to play other than those top four guys. This is a group that has a decent amount of question marks last year. What else? What? Oh, comment here from Jason. Yeah. With most teams mainly worrying about Miller, Oliver is going to flourish. Yeah, I mentioned that earlier to start the show. Like I think Oliver's one of those dudes. Again, he had one of the highest double team rates amongst all defensive linemen last year. Those double teams are going to be less because everybody has to account for Von Miller, or teams think Ed Oliver's the bigger threat, and they don't want to let pass rush affect the depth of the pocket, so they double team Ed Oliver, and Von Miller keeps getting more one-on-one reps. Or they think they have to double team both, so they keep a tight end in to block, and there's one less receiver going out into routes because you have to double team both of them, or a running back has to stay in to chip or provide extra support on the interior or the outside. A lot of possibilities. Very excited for Ed Oliver and Von Miller. Everybody keeps talking about like the dynamic duo of, kind of Rousseau and Von Miller. I think it's the dynamic duo of Von Miller and Ed Oliver, like a Von Miller and baby Aaron Donald. I think that could be tremendous. What else? What? Coming here from Talsey. I hope Stevenson shows out and wins the returner job. I just hope we get stability at the returner spot. When Isaiah McKenzie gets the ball in his hands, he's electric, but I think he's questionable anytime the ball is in the air. I think he's questionable with his ball security, and I think he's questionable with his decision-making. I just want stability at the returner position. If it's Marcus Stevenson, cool. If it's Khalil Shakir, cool. I like somebody who has home run potential and touchdown potential, but I will just take someone who can catch the ball, not fumble the ball or muff it, makes the good decisions, is sound in his judgment, whether to let it bounce or come up and make fair catches. That's all I want. Just give me stability. If it's Stevenson, cool. If it's Shakir, cool. I think it's going to come down to Stevenson and Shakir, though. Again, the Bills usually like to have their returner. That's his primary duty. Based on how much I think Isaiah McKenzie gets used more in this offense this year, I think they would like him to not be the returner. So I think it comes down to Stevenson or Shakir as of right now. But again, it's still very early in this offseason. We got to see what training camp and preseason shows and creates and all that kind of stuff. And good comment here from Dwayne too. Yeah, the offensive line training against Ed Oliver and Von Miller is going to be great help for the O-line. And yeah, comment here from Jason. They still have Groot, Daquan Jones, and Tim Settle on top of Oliver and Von Miller. They got a lot of versatility. I'm hoping for some formational tweaks this year and some more versatility up front. I'd like to see a little more tight front, a little more 404 on the defensive line to be able to play a gap and a half and counteract some spread offense work to play and pair with those two high safety looks. I'm very excited for that potential. Hey, William, welcome as we're about to wind down. There's a good comment here from Andrew. I'd be totally fine with boring special teams. It's better than having an aneurysm. Very fair. Very, very, very fair. We're going to start to wind down here on this show as I put up the banner that says Toodles, you guys. I want to, and if anybody has any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, feel free to continue to get them in now as we start to wind down here. But I do want to thank everyone who joined me live on this episode of Disguise Coverage. I know the date change. It's a Thursday. It's not Wednesday. Some people, get thrown into upheaval with a change in schedule, but the attendance tonight was really good. The engagement and the chat was tremendous as always. So thank you so much to everybody who joined me live on this episode of Disguise Coverage. I appreciate you all. Thank you very much for the super chats. And again, the kind words. And again, just the back and forth, the banter, the engagement. I really enjoy seeing the chat, blow up and seeing you guys interact and engage with one another, and the engagement and opportunity that I'm able to have with you guys, and the questions that get asked my way. They're always, legitimately like thought provoking and honest. And, I appreciate, Ronald says, I check YouTube every night. Well done, Ronald. Everybody be like Ronald. But yeah, I appreciate you guys so much for joining me live here on this episode, and the energy and the minds that you bring with you. If you didn't watch this episode live, that's cool. If you are listening to this episode, that's also cool. Whatever have you. If you're on YouTube, please, actually, if you're here now still, please drop a like. Please, 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 and thank you. If you're watching this later, please drop a like here on YouTube. If you are listening on any one of the podcasting apps or platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever have you, please give a 5-star rating. Please also give a review. Please give a subscription if you'd be so kind. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe to Disguise Coverage. Subscribe to the Cover One Film Room. While you're at it, subscribe to Cover One as a whole. We have you covered every single day of the week in a multitude of forms with a multitude of shows. We're the best out there when it comes to anything and everything Buffalo Bills, and in general football knowledge as well. I think there are several of us that make you smarter as a football fan and help you understand this game a lot better, if that's your cup of tea. And if not, more power to you. If it is, cool. A couple questions as we wind down here. Dwayne says, do you think our offense will be better and more dynamic this year, or more the same from last year? Either or still is not a bad thing. I guess it depends on, again, how you define better. I do expect to see more. I do expect them to be more dynamic. And for me, that's better. I am a fan of as much multiplicity as possible. I don't like it for the sake of it, right? If you're only good at 3 things, don't do 5 just because you're doing 5. But in a perfect world, I want to be as good I want to be as good at as many things as possible. So that way you can stay versatile, you can continuously adapt, you continuously evolve. I want the Bills to be good in the pass and the run. I want them to be able to run 11 personnel and 12 personnel and 21 personnel and 10 personnel. I want them to be able to run RPOs. I want them to be able to run screens, all of them, smokes, bubbles, tunnels. I want play action. I want a deep, passing game. I want short and intermediate, all these things, right? I expect to see a more dynamic offense this year, which to me is better. The additions of James Cook, the addition of OJ Howard, the improvement in the offensive line from a roster perspective and in a coaching perspective. I think you have a more dynamic offense this year because of the constant threats that are present on this team based on the coaching staff and the roster you've assembled. So to me, that's better. As far as more of the same from last year, I do think you see more 12 personnel with that signing of OJ Howard, and I do think you see a more successful running game. I think that's going to be a change. As far as usage rates, again, I don't know what it's going to look like at the end of the year. And even now, it's still too early to tell because we've never really seen what Ken Dorsey is as an offensive coordinator, although we have some inklings and some hints. But I expect to see a better running game, not from Josh Allen. I expect to see a better running game from the Bills' offensive line and Bills' running back. So I guess that would be a difference as well. But I expect to see a continuous attack and a strong offense. Comment from Jason. What defensive lineman do you think they'll part ways with? Oh boy. I don't know. I'm not ready to answer that question yet, Jason. Because there's a lot of guys on the defensive line who don't have term and length in their contract who would be easy guys to cut, but I also see those guys as making an impact. Like the Shaq Lawsons and the Jordan Phillipses of the world, getting that rotation in and getting that burn. I'm not ready to make that call. I'll put it like this instead of the opposite. I think I'll phrase it with the guys who I think right now are stone cold locks to make the team. So Von Miller, Rousseau, Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Tim Settle. Those are I think my top 5 locks. I think there's others who are on that, but those are my top 5 locks. I think honestly, Basham is probably a lock as well. But to Ronald's point, I think Epinesa, I like Epinesa more than Basham. But I think Epinesa could be a surprise trade candidate or cut. I also think Shaq Lawson's got a good chance to make the team because of his known quantity in terms of run support and setting the edge and being violent and strong at the point of attack. But I think there's around 5 to 6 that are locks right now for me. But I do think it's too early to answer that question. But it's going to be a battle like that. That's a grouping we talked about earlier. That defensive line questions, but in both good and bad ways. So seeing who makes this team and in what capacity is a real big thing, and something that I'm really looking forward to come training camp and really come the preseason. I like having battles in training camp and preseason, so that way you have something to really focus in on and hone in on come preseason games to really see how's this person doing, how's this position group looking, and then being able to go back and break it down in film, and look at the X's and O's and the hows and whys of things. So I'm very excited to see that position grouping there. No, Jason, the tree does not have its own Twitter page. It probably should. I only do this show so I can show the tree. As I've stated before, this show is just a medium to being able to talk about the tree and show the tree. Oh, appreciate the kind words, Jason. Thank you so much. Yeah, and I think that's going to do it for us here on this episode of Disguise Coverage. Again, I appreciate you guys tremendously, and girls. I appreciate you guys and girls tremendously and more than you will ever know. Thank you so much for being with me here live on the show. And if you weren't, you watched later, listened later, whatever have you, thank you very much for your view, your download, your listen. I really hope you enjoyed the show. And if you didn't, that's fine. Try to ruin your enemy's day. Like I always like to say, if you enjoyed the show, cool. Tell your family, friends, and loved ones about it. More eyes and ears so we can continue to grow this thing and ride it until the wheels fall off. And then on the flip side, if you didn't enjoy this show, tell your enemies about it so that you can try and ruin their day with this show, because any press is good press. And thank you very much for joining me on tonight's episode. I hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and are staying safe. Take care of one another. Be kind to one another. And I will see you next week. And as always, go Bills.